Hi everybody, and welcome back to the main stage for this afternoon's sessions. This afternoon we've got a couple of chunks for you, and in this particular session we're going to be looking at the people side of the business, let's not talk about just health and safety, and let's not just talk about sort of duty of care and everything else. Let's talk about how we can take better care of our people, how we can have some swagger around doing that, and how we can bring some refreshing elements to that. So we're going to be listening very shortly to Gill Monk, who's the MD at Fit for Construction and All Health Matters. Then we're going to be sharing some time with Jason Wickenden and Ian Pickard, who will be doing the swagger stuff. So with no more ado, over to you, Gill.
Thank you, Richard. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's out there. I have no idea whether I'm talking to an empty room or not, but welcome to the stage. I haven't got any velvet curtains and footlights, I'm afraid, and I won't dance. But anyway, you'll just have to put up with me talking. So thank you for being here and for your interest in FFC, or Fit for Construction. But first of all, let me just tell you a little bit about how this has come about. I shan't bore you too much, but let's just give you a little bit of background. Some of you know that I'm Managing Director of All Health Matters. We're a small occupational health business based in Kent, but we have 5 clinics now, and we deal mainly in the southeast London, also around the country, and nicely as well, we often go abroad as well for some of our major clients. As All Health Matters, we have a range of clients in all business sectors, from corporates to window cleaners, but construction is very close to my heart, and I do have a little bit of obsession with all the industrials, really. I call them the dirt under the fingernail businesses rather than the sitting behind a desk. So I don't know why I'm so obsessed about construction, possibly because I have fond memories as a child of roaming around construction sites, climbing scaffold and going up ladders and half-built stairs and jumping drain runs that had just been dug and balancing on planks that took you across uneven ground. And I'm sure there are some of you, certainly in my age group, who did all those things. Of course, I can't do those things anymore, which is a real shame, but I'm just too old now for it, which is a shame, really. But anyway, but first and foremost, I'm a businesswoman. This is my 9th business, and over the years that I've helped build and move on, All Health Matters and Fit for Construction may well be the last, because I'm getting on a little bit, as you can see. But I'm very passionate about a proactive approach to health. But I understand the difficulties of running a business because I have run so many. I understand what it's like when you own your own business or you manage a business, just how difficult it is, and the challenges that you face when you start employing people, or when you start buying plant, or when you start growing. There are so many challenges for a business owner or business managers to face. And we've all got to abide by the raft of legislation that surrounds employment law, health and safety law, occupational health law, all of the different regulations that come under running a business, regardless of which business you're in. But we know that all businesses need assets, or most of them, unless you work for yourself, of course. But all businesses need assets, and construction industry more so than most, I would suggest. And of course, when you buy an asset, let's think about a lorry, for instance. So you've got an HGV, you've got a driver. You have to make sure that that lorry is well maintained, that there's oil is checked regularly, that there's air in the tyres, there's water in the radiator, and that all of those things. But then you've also got the legal aspects. So you've got to have your MOT in place, your insurance, your HGV medical, your HGV license rather. So all of those things are again pressures on a company, and of course there's a cost. But people who work for you are also assets, and I would argue that they're probably the greatest assets you've got. There's no point in making the best widget in the world if you haven't got anybody to make it, sell it, box it, deliver it, invoice it, collect the money. What's the point in making the widget? Your staff probably cost you more than anything else. But unlike other assets, they're not on the balance sheet. They are on your profit and loss account. And they cost you dearly if they break down, just as your lorry would if it breaks down. So it makes sense to make sure that your staff are properly maintained so that they are working at full capacity. A construction site is said to be one of the most dangerous environments in the business world. Now, I know quite a few oil and gas engineers who work off the coast of Africa that would probably take issue with that and argue. But for the purposes of today, I've got my construction hat, which is by far my favourite, and I'm going to maintain that construction sites are pretty dangerous places. But when you hear the word dangerous, and when people hear the word dangerous, they automatically think of health and safety. You think of demarcation lines, you think of safety netting and hard hats and safety boots, don't you? It's all about the safeguarding of the individual. But it isn't just safeguarding that we're interested in. In fact, the law requires you to make sure that people go home healthy, and that is a strap line, as you've probably heard, go home healthy. So whilst we might have PPE and codes of practice and safe systems of work, we have to make sure that all those controls that we've put in are effective. And that is where safety criticals and health surveillance comes, safety critical medicals and pre-placement medicals and health surveillance comes in. Occupational health is a specialist branch of medicine. It isn't health and safety. Neither are we in hospitals dealing with grab handles on the bath or helping people put the kettle on after having a stroke. Occupational health is the specialist branch, just like orthopedics or geriatrics or pediatrics, that deals with work-related medical conditions and diseases. And occupational health professionals know about these things that go on. They know the effects of different workplace environments can have on health. That's what All Health Matters does. That's what we do. That's our bread and butter. We look after the health of people at work. Now you might say, well, I've come here because I'm interested in fit for construction, because it sounded quite snappy, and it's something I'm quite interested in. So let's have a look at fit for construction and why I wanted to talk to you today about it. Many of you will know or will have heard of or seen the logos of an organisation called Constructing Better Health, or the CBH scheme. Now that scheme was put together about 2008, 2009, I can't exactly remember, but it was around about that time when a document was produced following Dame Carol Black's review of the working health of the British population. And sadly, the CBH scheme, which set up minimum medical standards for a consistent approach across all building sites, sadly, that scheme has fizzled away to nothing and was finally folded up in August, which was a shame because there were a lot of companies part of that scheme, and there were a lot of occupational health providers who were accredited by that scheme, and therefore we partnered with the construction industry to make sure we delivered that scheme properly. So FFC was born because we recognise that there's now a big hole where there used to be something called CBH. If you work on the railways, there's something called the Network Rail Standards, and you can't work on the railways unless you have met the medical standards required for railway work. An equally dangerous environment to be in, but with different dangers and different health issues, not the same necessarily as construction. There are driving medical standards issued by the DVLA. So you have to meet certain medical standards in order to drive a car or a coach or a bus or an HGV. There are aviation medical standards, which are there, of course, for, well, you might guess it, for pilots, and the same for shipping. But there was this great big hole where construction was left out. Now, construction, as we've already said, is a very dangerous environment to be in, and it can bring with it lots of health hazards. So the FFC was formed as a way to replace the CBH scheme, and with the Society of Occupational Medicine, who have agreed to review all the medical standards that were there for the construction industry. The Society are reviewing those with the aim of publishing a set of definitive guidelines for 2020 and beyond, because let's all face it, construction is going to change over the next 10 to 20 years. We know that. There is evidence of that around in this exhibition today. Construction will change, so we have to have a system that's flexible, that will change with it, that is forward seeing, that has vision. So while the SOM get on doing that, and some of the FFC members are part of that special interest group in the society, the FFC group, of which are now numbering over 110, and that's growing all the time, are interested in forming a panel where the construction companies, if you're looking for help with your occupational health, you can dial in or look up the register of FFC companies, and you can choose who you like off that list. You do your own deals with them, but they will provide the exact same medical standards as everyone else bearing the FFC logo. Now, you might say, well, there's lots of occupational health companies around today anyway that do that. You know, mine does that and yours does that. But you would be surprised at the difference in standards that different occupational companies apply. You will also, you may or may not be surprised to learn that you could turn up on a Skanska site, for instance, with a medical certificate from a very reputable occupational health provider, only to be turned away to say your medical certificate doesn't meet our standard. You might find that you are then having to, when you're tendering for work as a contractor, you're having to list what your occupational health provision looks like and what standards you meet as part of that tender. And it might be that if you don't meet the right standards, that you are automatically disqualified at PQQ level. Now, we want to get over that. We want to come to a point where this group of OH providers are all working to an agreed standard. They're all bona fide. You can trust that they know what they're talking about. You can trust that their medical certificates will be valid, regardless of which site you're going on, where you're going, anywhere in the country, or who you're working for. And that medical certificate will remain valid for its life, regardless of where you're working. So for those chaps that go from site to site, their fitness passport, if you like, will go with them, only if it bears the FFC logo. And that, of course, will be very tightly controlled. The big plus on this, which this Constructing Better Health scheme couldn't offer, is that we don't want the construction industry to pay for this. We do not believe that it is the construction industry's place to have to pay for these standards to be put together or to run this scheme, any more than the DVLA expect the transport industry to pay for them, or any more than the railway industry expect the companies to pay for that. So we want to offer a free register of occupational health professionals that you as contractors can approach. You can choose who you like. You do your own deals with them, but they will be competitive and they will be qualified and experienced to deliver the service. And that will not cost you anything. All you will have to pay for is the work that you commission. That's what FFC is all about. We are in our infancy. We are building it at the moment, talking to software people about how we're going to scrutinise applicants for the register, how we're going to make sure the register is available to all of you so that you can see it. And of course, how we're going to, and I don't want to use the word police, but I suppose, and I don't want to use the word regulate, but we have, of course, got to keep some control so that you have trust in us, that anybody on our list is giving you the service that's fit for purpose. That is what FFC is all about. And we would love any of you that are interested in helping us with this. We want you to contact us because it is a collaborative affair between occupational health and the construction industry. We're not in this alone. That ends my speech, for want of a better word. My alarm is going off telling me I've done my time. And I would now ask if there's anybody there. Is there anybody there? If anybody has any questions for me. Hello. Anybody got any questions?
Hey, Jill. So we'll do questions at the end after Jason and Ian. So we'll bring you back on, and any questions we'll go for right at the end.
Oh, right. Okay. So do you want me to introduce Jason and Ian now?
Go for it.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Right, questions right at the end, I'm told. So I'm now going to introduce to you Jason and Ian, who, when I asked them how they'd like me to introduce you, they just said swag. So that sounds okay to me. So over to Jason and Ian. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, well, that was almost seamless. Thank you for having us. I'm Jason Wickenden from Cheesmur.
I'm Ian Pickard from IDP.
And SWAG is a Sussex Wellness Action Group. It developed from an email I sent back in August to Westridge, Sunninghill and Ian about trying to support mental health and well-being within the industry. We've got a little presentation to run through.
1 in 4 of us will suffer at some stage from ill mental health in our life. Statistics show that 6,500 suicides were registered in the UK. 3/4 of those were men from low-skilled jobs in the construction industry, which is 3 times higher than the national average in England. It's roughly about 2 construction workers a day dying. Their ages are from 40 to 49 years old, and they're different mental health illnesses that they're suffering from before they tend to commit suicide. Mental health is the second largest burden to the NHS. Around 700 people from construction alone are committing suicide every year, and we're roughly 250,000 short in skilled tradesmen in the industry at the moment.
What we're going to do is set up a non-profit making initiative to get all the businesses in the local area together, set aside any competitive edge. We want to provide the best mental health environment we can to support everybody throughout the industry. Initially, it was down to be for site-based workers and construction staff, but as we presented at a breakfast club on a cold, damp Tuesday morning, a lot of consultants, clients, all bought into the process. So it's expanded rapidly.
From that, obviously, the aim of SWAG was to try and benefit from breaking down the stigma, getting local construction companies on board at site and office levels, and creating a collective of consultants and clients and pooling the mental health first aid resource together. We're trying to break down the stigma and try and assist people at the early stages before their mental health declines too much. We're providing guidance, as in posters on the sites, and we're trying to run mental health courses and trying to get funding from that. And the main aim is to get people talking about mental health and break the stigma down. So the guys on site and the office workers can approach mental health first aiders from different organisations, not only their own, because there still is a stigma that if they go and talk to one of their employers, that they might be shunned upon from having a problem with mental health.
What we have been asked by very, very few people that have shown any interest in the scheme is what the financial benefit. I would say that 99% of the people that have been involved have shown no interest in the financial benefit. We can't actually justify that there's a financial benefit, but if we can provide a consolidated approach to mental health and well-being, we'll end up with a happier construction industry. And I think it's been proven over the past, if you've got a happy industry, you're going to be more efficient, you'll have more people working, and you have a less absenteeism from mental health. So there is a financial benefit, but whether it's a tangible, definable financial benefit, we don't know.
So introducing the standards and the posters to make them uniformed, we found that when we had a meeting with the main contractors in the local area, that our supply chain was much the same. And by spreading those posters out onto the construction sites, the same people will be seeing the same posters uniformed throughout each site. The idea is to concentrate on mental health and well-being and try and help people within the businesses, mainly construction, but also we've got quite a few consultants on board now, and pull the mental health first aiders within these organisations, publish the numbers, and allow people to speak to people without judgment in different organisations if they need to seek help.
What we've got to do is offer someone the ability to see that there's confidence throughout the industry on sites, in offices, consultants' offices, construction offices. We've got a few solicitors and various other people that have shown interest to be involved. But we feel that if there's an opportunity to go and talk to a party within another organisation that's got a mental health first aid qualification, then people may be more conducive to going to speak to them rather than suffering the stigma of, oh, perhaps they're not going to treat me as well as they did before the mental health crisis. Everybody knows, everybody's got mental health, and we need to improve it for the benefit of all. This is going public in early October. We've now got over 30 businesses, which has increased dramatically. The CIOB Southern Region are interested in supporting us and have shown support. It's going to the directors. The Maidstone CIOB have also shown an interest in taking it to Kent. The Constructing Excellence in Kent have asked if they can take the blueprint for SWAG across into the Kent region, which we will do so as soon as we know that it works within the Southern region. If we can get the posters out so everybody feels comfortable that it's a consistent approach across the industry, then that'll be the starting point. People are talking about mental health and well-being, which is an absolute vast improvement. And with Mason Mind behind us, they're providing the professional support that we need to get mental health awareness out there.
So the objectives of SWAG are to break down the stigma of mental health, create a culture where people feel happy talking about ill mental health. Every company will have trained mental health first aiders. The small supply chain companies can use the pool to get their mental health first aiders from the bigger main contractors. But the idea is that when a main contractor runs a course, that they invite their supply chain onto that course as well. The idea is that people within those organisations will then put their names forward with a number, and people from different organisations can phone them. The idea is to promote the conversation within the construction industry. I've also set up a men's chatting group on a Wednesday night on Zoom called Mankind. You might have seen some of the posters around. And we, on average, have between 8 and 16 guys on Zoom on a Wednesday night just talking through their issues and problems. The idea is to try and break those barriers down and get guys talking to us, and to try and help them and signpost them into the right direction.
We've got some longer term objectives. We've initially started getting people talking, which is brilliant. So we've got various items there. The biggest thing I wanted to talk about is I'm a co-chair of the Mates in Mind interest group into mental health within the construction industry. And one of the things I've stated on there is that it must come from, or my belief is it must come from the client base. So we can introduce mental health into tender packages so that it can complement actual physical health, and having first aiders on site for physical health and accidents. Why don't we have a mental health first aider? Mental Health England are lobbying government at the moment, and there should be a bill passed where it will be necessary to have a mental health first aider where a physical first aid is required on a construction site. So we've asked clients to get involved in this, and professionals, so that we put together a very, very basic clauses written by a builder, which was me. It needs to be elaborated on by some consultants, and thankfully Ashburn and Cameron Partnership have now sent out the first tender package, which includes the provision in red for a mental health first aider to be on site, or made available to site, sorry, whether it's in the office or on site. So someone has access from construction level right the way through to client teams, consultants and the like. Ian and myself are in the process of setting up a company, a charity and a community company, which will be non-profit making, to try and secure some funding. East Sussex County Council are behind us on that, so we can try and look to deliver counselling at either free or much reduced costs for those people that need it before the NHS can kick in.
So, cost to the taxpayer. Well, ill mental health costs the NHS between 95 and 105 billion pound every year. On average, that's 1,300 per employee every year. So early stages of intervention can drop that down radically. The research shows that if employers spend £1 on counselling, on helping people out with ill mental health, they will actually save £5 because the production goes up, absenteeism drops, and the people's health improves by spending £1 and gaining £5.
The key thing is no one should suffer in silence. We've all got mental health, so let's make sure it's safe and healthy mental health. So apologies for that. Let's get the conversation. Let's everybody start talking, and let's get people talking without fear of the stigma or the reprisal.
So 4 pillars that could affect you if your physical health is run down. They encourage people to walk at least 20 minutes per day, which is not very hard to do. If you go to the gym or play badminton, then you're going to easily achieve that. Your mental health, if you're suffering from stress or depression, knowing what those trigger points are, what your safe place is, and what your coping strategies are. Often we find with ill mental health, the last two are what people suffer from more, and that is obviously financial change. People are getting made redundant, and fear of losing their job, and that has a knock-on effect to their family and their friends as well. If we can try and achieve all 4 of those to some degree, then our mental health is going to be better for that.
Just a few examples of those people that have suffered in silence and ended up taking their lives. When we presented to a few people, mainly Westridge and Sunninghill, they greatly appreciated it, giving their time to us, and they asked us to simplify our goals and ambitions, which we set out there. And it's moving forward. It's moving forward at pace. We're taking a little period of consolidation, but we will be moving forward once lockdown eases.
So swag, let's work together to stop people suffering in silence. Let's support each other and provide help to everyone. And let's strive to reduce the number of suicides. If we can stop one, we've achieved our goal.
What I would like to say, we put the presentation together, but I think anybody that's out there that's been to one of our talks in the open, we're very passionate about mental health and well-being. And if you want us to come and speak to you, we're more than happy to do so. We just want to make sure that there's a collective together, that people can come and get the support they need. The building industry is very macho. Let's break that down. We need more women involved in the industry, which everybody is fighting for. So yeah, let's please ask somebody how they are. You may need to ask them once, twice, 3 times. They'll probably say, I'm fine. Oh, actually. And then have a chat with them, talk to them, listen. Don't be judgmental. So yeah, anybody wants any information on swag, can get hold of myself through Cheesmur, Ian Pickard through IDP Safety. Yeah, not much more to say. But any questions? I think we're passing back now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, guys, and also thank you to Gill. Gentlemen, could I start with you two first? In addition to my voluntary role as the chair of the Institute of Directors in Surrey, where I do have a mental health ambassador on my board, I'm also on the board of trustees of a mental health charity in Surrey, and your message resonates massively with me personally and with my peers. So all power to you, and thank you so much for stepping up and between you doing something about this alongside what you're doing for a living. I think that is commendable and exemplary. So thank you so much. And for anybody else out there, you know, especially mates, all right, especially blokes, any of you guys out there, you know, if I could just share one thing with you to add to what Jason and Ian was saying. Look, you know, how are you is no longer a rhetorical question. If you're not prepared to ask that question properly to somebody, don't ask it. You know, talk about the weather or something. But how are you is no longer a rhetorical question. The whole mental health issue isn't blown up by the media. It's a reality felt deeply by people. So more power to you, Jason, more power to you, Ian. And a quick question, if I may, just on what you were saying. The human impact and the human benefit is pretty straightforward and understood well. You mentioned that it's, you know, it's hard to put a financial figure on it, but in your experience, beyond the stats, maybe, what's the financial benefit to industry or to people that you know who are bringing a more enlightened approach to mental health within their business? Have you got any sort of ideas around that?
Yeah, the people we've helped so far, there's a few that actually wanted to come back to work, go into an atmosphere where it's open and honest. People can talk about their feelings without, I put with fear of reprisal. I use reprisal as quite a dominant word to bring a reaction. There are still people out there in our industry, in particular, that are still living in the old school. And if we can remove that, people want to come to work, have a happy environment, feel motivated to come to work, and actually enjoy work again. There's a lot of people that we've spoken to feel pressured because they're mentally unwell or they're feeling mentally unwell, they've got an issue, they need to come to us and talk about it. We're not, by no means are we counsellors, but we can signpost as mental health first aiders.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. I mean, the wider that the network becomes, where people can feel that they can talk to people who can then signpost on. I think that will produce a more healthy sort of workplace environment, and really, happy people are productive people, and I sort of know that in my business. I have a training and development business around productivity improvement, and whilst our clients love the 53 minutes extra capacity per person per day, productive capacity per person per day from our training, the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning is the 43% reduction in stress at work, measured across thousands of people over the past 20 years as a result of our training. My clients like that too, but they still like the productivity numbers and what have you. But anything that any of us can do to reduce stress at work, which is very different to mental health, but it does sort of probably lead on to mental health, then the better. Gill, I was interested in what you were saying about sort of what you're doing, and I did notice that some people were asking, how it lines up with systems that are already in play, if you will. Why should people sort of consider getting more involved with what you're doing right now there, Gill?
Well, I think, there was a question about CQOSH,
yes.
and this is a whole subject that we haven't got time for today. But in a nutshell, CQOSH is another quality standard like ISO 9001 or Care Quality Commission. Now, we have got CQC. Mm-hmm. So we already go through huge amounts of audits, and they go crawling all over us. I would say it's like Ofsted for medics. So we already have to pay a lot of money and jump through a lot of hoops. So I don't see why I should need to go and get CQOSH. FFC is going to be, and these medical standards are construction specific. Just like the network railway medical standards are, just like drivers, as I said, these are construction specific. They're not crawling. Sure that you've got a slavery policy and that you're recruiting right and your training's up to date. This is about the medical standards, and this is about companies who are working with construction, not just doing that hands-on surveillance, but doing the whole thing. And as Jason and Ian were saying, mental health is a big part of that. And if you have a good occupational health provider, we deliver a cradle to grave service so that it is construction specific. And CQOSH isn't that. CQOSH is, may I just say, it is another management standard. It is also incredibly expensive. It's not accredited because it is regulated by itself. And it's very expensive. So you'll find that a lot of the public services, as I've said, there are very, very few commercial companies out here that are registered with CQOSH. The rest of us go for ISO 9001, CQC, ISO 45001, things that are recognised by the industries that we work with. That's the difference, and we are construction specific.
Absolutely, and in my business and in my role as chair of the Institute of Directors, I get to talk with a lot of businesses all the time, and one of the things that strikes me from a number of very recent conversations is that people are telling me, and maybe the HR people who might be on here today, or the people who are responsible for people who are on here today, would resonate with this, but I'm hearing a lot from directors where their people are suffering, the impact of what's going on here, and it's not necessarily the triggers at work that are the challenge. People come in to work more burdened than they were before lockdown one, and very often it is just the casual remark or the slight incident at work that becomes that touchstone and trigger for something that's very deeper and underlying. And I suspect that we as employers need to be thinking about that as much as, you know, how stress less we make the work processes, because people come in already wound up very often. Yes. And very often employers or untrained employees who are team leaders or what have you start to feel the brunt of it straight away. You know, you're not even talking at director level here. You're talking about first level team member level. So yeah, big challenge. So Chris Rapson sort of asks he says to Jason and Ian, but I suspect to all three of us, is it important that in actual fact we're talking about isolating and eradicating the triggers within the workplace that may contribute to the onset of mental health issues?
Well, I think everyone works under stress. Some people thrive on stress, and we all live with stress. But it's just knowing your balance point, where you're gonna get to, and being able to talk to someone when you're under too much pressure. And it gets beyond your capability to actually cope with it. So I think it's important to know your limitations, because everyone's coping strategies are different.
Do you not think that there's been a change in language? And it is language. Once upon a time, you would have someone who had anxiety. Now everything sort of gets labelled stress. Now, stress isn't an illness, it's a response to a set of circumstances. It's overwhelming stress that can manifest itself as being an ill health matter and a mental health breakdown. Some of us strive, as you just said, strive under pressure. And you'll say, oh, I work much better under pressure, because it's that fight or flight. It's the adrenaline push that makes you want to get out there and do or run. So it's it is just about the amount of stress and pressures in the workplace, but it's not just about the workplace. It's the whole socio-economic background. It's what's going on at home. You might have someone at work who's looking as though they're very stressed, and that you think it's about their job, but in fact it's not. It's because the dog died, or the wife's left, or they've got a teenager who's playing up, or whatever. And all of those outside forces and the environment in which they live, it has an impact, and that's different around the country. You'll see in the Welsh Valleys a whole different set of stressors in the Welsh Valleys than you would here. So it's a completely different melting pot. But it's so important that we look after employees. And I mean, that's with my occupational hat on, my Fit for Construction hat on, of course. I'm all about protecting you from the HSE as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And
it's ever more important, that question, how are you?
It's no longer a rhetorical question. I mean, you know, everyone on this call, you know, spread that word, because how are you is no longer a rhetorical question. It demands an answer, and it demands our time and attention. And if we're not prepared to do that, then talk about the football, especially blokes. Talk about the football, talk about something else, but don't ask the question unless you're prepared to listen to, especially with your mates. You know, it's important.
And I'll say
there are some very good videos on the HSE website about this. I'm sure you've seen them. The construction videos also made by the Crossrail team. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Worth looking at.
Yeah. Team, Jason and Ian and Jill, thank you so much for sharing some of that stuff. And if I may, Jason and Ian, power to your elbow, mate, you know, about what you're doing beyond your commercial business, you know, and to everybody else, if you felt that this is useful, then tap into the chat area, your sort of takeaways, or maybe Jill mentioned there a couple of references to some videos. Is there a URL that you find useful that you would recommend? Tap something into the chat so that others who are on here, who are also thinking about the past 20, 30 minutes or so, might have something else to look at before they move on to the next event. So thank you to our speakers, and we're very closely now coming to the close of this stage event, and we're going to be moving on the stage actually within the next 5 minutes or so back into the final session of the afternoon. So you might have a couple of minutes for some networking or visiting booths. We've all got booths. Have a visit, or hang around, and we'll be on stage again at 2:30. But for now, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Thank you.